I never thought the day would come when my own parents would stand in my living room, faces stern and voices cold, demanding that I hand over the keys to the house I had worked years to buy. But that's exactly what happened. My mom crossed her arms, my dad leaned against the wall, and together they said the words that would burn into my memory forever. "It's time to stop being selfish, Claire. Your brother deserves this place more than you. He's the golden child, he's starting a family, and well, you'll understand when you're older." I just stood there, holding my breath, wondering how the people who raised me could erase me so casually. To them, my sacrifices, my late nights, my second job, the years of saving, none of it mattered. All that mattered was him, my younger brother Michael, the one who never paid rent, who blew through credit cards, who dropped out of school and still somehow got praised for finding his own way. He was always the golden child, the sun around which my parents orbited, while I was just the shadow. But that night, staring at the people I thought loved me unconditionally, I realized something. They had no idea what I had been planning all along. They had no idea that the house they wanted to strip from me wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. It was a lifeline, a secret I had kept tucked away, waiting for the day they tried to break me. And trust me, when they finally pushed too far, I was ready. But before I tell you what happened next, let me take you back to the beginning, to when I first realized I would always be second best in my own family. Growing up, Michael was the star of every show. When he hit a baseball off the tee at age 5, my parents clapped like he had won the World Series. When he drew a messy crayon picture, they framed it on the wall. Me? I brought home honor roll certificates, debate trophies, scholarships. Those were met with a nod, maybe a good job, sweetie, before they went back to bragging about Michael's latest adventure. I remember one Christmas when I was 16. I had worked part-time all year, saved up, and bought my parents a nice coffee machine they had been hinting about. They smiled, thanked me, and put it on the counter. Michael, meanwhile, had forgotten to buy gifts. He handed my mom a rock he found in the yard, saying it was lucky. She cried. She actually cried, hugging him like he had given her the moon. That was the moment I learned my place in the family hierarchy. I was the responsible one, the reliable one, the one they never had to worry about. Which sounds nice until you realize it meant I was invisible. When college came, I chose a nearby university so I could stay home and help with bills. I commuted, worked part-time jobs, paid for my own textbooks. Michael, 2 years younger, was sent to a private school out of state, fully funded by my parents. He dropped out after a year, came home with nothing but stories of parties and networking, and my parents still threw him a welcome home party. I was 23 when I finally decided I needed to break free. I picked up extra shifts, skipped vacations, lived on ramen and instant coffee. For 5 years, I saved every spare dollar until the day came when I could sign my own mortgage. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. A little 2-bedroom house on a quiet street, with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, but also a porch swing and a tiny backyard where I planted sunflowers. I cried the day I got the keys, not because it was perfect, but because it was proof I could stand on my own. Of course, my parents' first reaction wasn't pride, it was confusion. "Why would you buy a place so small?" my mom asked. "Wouldn't it make more sense to wait until Michael settles down, so maybe you two could get something together?" That was the first time the shadow of Michael's needs crept into my house. But it wouldn't be the last. At first, I told myself maybe I was imagining it. Maybe my parents weren't really hinting that my house should eventually belong to Michael. But the comments kept coming. My dad would say things like, "This place has good bones, perfect for raising kids," while looking straight at Michael. My mom would sigh about how it was unfair that her son was still renting a cramped apartment while I had a mortgage and a yard. I'd bite my tongue, remind myself I had earned this, but the resentment in their eyes grew heavier every time they visited. The breaking point started small. Michael asked if he could crash in my spare bedroom for a couple of weeks while he figured out his next step. Against my better judgment, I said yes. He moved in with nothing but garbage bags of clothes and a box of half-broken electronics. 2 weeks turned into 2 months. He never paid rent, rarely bought groceries, and left dirty dishes stacked in the sink like it was my job to clean up after him. My parents praised him for being independent and told me I should be grateful for the company. Then came the utilities. My mom casually mentioned that since Michael was staying with me, I should cover his phone bill, just until he finds a steady job. My dad added that maybe I could help him with his car insurance too. He's under a lot of pressure, they said, as if my own pressure didn't exist. I worked 12-hour days at the hospital, came home exhausted, and still had to step over Michael's laundry just to get to my bed. One night, I walked into my kitchen to find him throwing a party, my fridge raided, beer bottles on the counter. When I told him to cut it out, he laughed and said, "Relax, Claire. This house isn't going anywhere. It's family property." Those words froze me. Family property. Where had he even gotten that idea? The answer came the following weekend when my parents showed up unannounced. My mom walked through the door like she owned the place, glanced around and said, "You know, it makes sense for Michael to settle here permanently. He's starting a family soon. He needs stability. You're still single, and you can always buy another place later. This house should go to him." I felt my chest tighten, like the walls themselves were closing in. "Mom," I said slowly, "this is my house. I bought it. My name is on the mortgage. This isn't up for debate." She waved her hand like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "Don't be selfish. He's the one who'll carry on the family name, the one who'll give us grandchildren. You'll understand when you're older." My dad chimed in, his voice firm. "Do the right thing, Claire. Sign the house over to your brother." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The years of sacrifice, of skipped dinners and sleepless nights, of patching leaky pipes with my own hands, all of it dismissed in one breath. That night after they left, Michael smirked at me in the hallway. "Don't fight it, Claire. They're right. This place was always meant for me. You're just keeping it warm." I slammed my bedroom door, shaking with rage. The next few weeks were torture. My parents called constantly, reminding me of my duty. Michael started acting like he already owned the place, bringing over his girlfriend, talking about how he'd renovate the garage for a home office. My mom even showed up with paint swatches, holding them against the walls as if she had the final say. Every part of me wanted to scream, to throw them out, but a deeper part of me stayed quiet, because they didn't know what I had tucked away. They didn't know that when I bought the house, I had done something smart, something my parents never considered. I had set up a trust, one that protected the deed in ways they couldn't touch. Back then, I did it for financial security. Now it was my secret weapon. And as the pressure mounted, as the phone calls turned into threats of being cut off from the family, I began to realize I would have to use it. Because if they thought they could bully me into giving up everything I built, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The weeks blurred into each other, each one heavier than the last. Michael had fully taken over the spare room, plastering his band posters on the walls, filling the closet with his clothes, even dragging my grandmother's old dresser out onto the curb without asking. "Didn't fit my vibe," he shrugged when I confronted him. I wanted to scream, but my parents would only scold me for making him uncomfortable. The audacity was suffocating. Every family dinner turned into an inquisition. My mom would sit across the table, fork clinking against her plate, asking, "So, Claire, have you decided when you'll transfer the house deed to Michael?" My dad would lean back in his chair, sighing about how selfish it looked for me to cling to a building when my brother needed it to start his future. Michael sat there smug, already making plans, already talking about knocking down walls and turning the basement into a gym. His girlfriend Kayla chimed in once, laughing. "We could even put a nursery in that second bedroom." The words cut deeper than they knew. A nursery, my house, my sacrifices, my life. And yet, to them, I was invisible. One night, I came home after a double shift, exhausted, only to find Michael hosting another gathering. Music blasted, pizza boxes littered the counter, strangers lounged on my couch like they owned it. I pulled the plug on the speaker, and the silence that followed was thick with tension. Michael glared at me. "Why do you care? This isn't really yours. Everyone knows it's meant for me. Everyone." That word echoed like thunder. They had convinced themselves that my work, my years of sweat and saving, were meaningless compared to the golden boy's potential. It was no longer just pressure. It was theft in slow motion. I locked myself in my room that night, shaking with rage and fear, clutching the trust documents I had hidden away in my filing cabinet. I read through every page by the dim light of a lamp, my heartbeat slowing with each clause that confirmed what I already knew. They couldn't take this from me. Not legally, not unless I let them. But knowing that didn't make the emotional toll any easier. My mom left voicemails dripping with guilt, calling me cold, ungrateful, heartless. My dad sent texts about how family always sacrifices for each other, though somehow that rule only applied to me. Even my aunt called once, parroting their lines, telling me I'd regret it if I didn't do the right thing. It was like the whole world had joined their chorus. And Michael? He strutted around the house like a landlord, patting my shoulder, whispering, "You'll cave eventually." "You always do." But he was wrong. I wasn't going to cave. What they didn't know was that every day they pushed me, every guilt trip, every insult, every act of entitlement, it was only making me stronger. I started documenting everything, the parties, the messes, the threats. I saved every voicemail, every text. I took photos of damage Michael caused, receipts for repairs I paid out of pocket. I built a file thick enough to crush their lies under its weight, and then came the night it all boiled over. My parents invited me to what they called a family meeting. I showed up, knowing exactly what it would be, an ambush. We sat around their dining table, the chandelier buzzing overhead, the air sharp with tension. My mom opened with her rehearsed line, "Claire, it's time. Michael needs that house. You've had your fun playing homeowner, but it's not practical anymore." My dad nodded solemnly. "Think of the family legacy. You don't want to be the reason your brother struggles." Michael leaned forward, smirking, sliding a blank deed transfer form across the table. "Just sign it, sis. Make this easy on yourself." My hands trembled, not with fear, but with fury. I looked at each of them, one by one, and realized something. They didn't just expect me to give up my house. They expected me to give up myself. That's when I spoke, my voice low but steady. "You think I'm going to hand over the one thing I bled for? You think I'm still that girl who bends every time you push? Not anymore." My mom's face flushed red. "Claire, don't be dramatic. We're asking for what's fair." I laughed bitterly. "Fair? You gave him everything, every break, every excuse, while I worked 2 jobs just to stay afloat. And now you want me to give him my house? No, not this time." Michael's smirk faltered, his pen tapping nervously against the table. My dad growled, "You'll regret this." Maybe. But as I pushed the papers back toward him, refusing to sign, I knew something they didn't. I had already prepared for this moment. I had the trust. I had the documentation. And I had one final card to play, one they never saw coming. The silence after I pushed the papers back was so sharp I could hear the ticking of the old clock in the hallway. My mom's lips tightened, my dad's jaw clenched, and Michael's smug grin twisted into a scowl. He jabbed his finger at me like a spoiled child denied his toy. "You're pathetic, Claire. Always acting like you're better than everyone, when the truth is, you're nothing. This house," he sneered, "was always meant for me." My dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough games. You will sign those papers, or we'll make sure you regret it." My hands trembled, but not from fear anymore, from the sheer release of knowing I was finally done being their puppet. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "You can't take what isn't yours. And you'd know that if you bothered to read the law instead of bullying me." I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder, the one I had built night after night while they tried to wear me down. I laid it flat on the table and flipped it open to the trust documents. Their eyes darted over the pages, confusion spreading across their faces. "This house," I said, tapping the title page, "is held in a trust under my name. That means it's protected. It cannot be transferred without my consent. You could hire every lawyer in the city, and it still wouldn't matter. You have no claim." "None." My mom blinked, her confidence wavering. But we're family. Family can work around these things." I shook my head. "Family doesn't get to strip me of everything I worked for. Family doesn't get to treat me like a backup plan. You wanted me to sacrifice, again and again. But the truth is, you only ever saw me as second best. Not anymore." Michael grabbed the folder, flipping through it like a man drowning, searching for a loophole. This can't be real." I smirked for the first time in years. "It's very real. Every document signed, notarized, filed. I even consulted a lawyer last month when you started throwing your little parties here, just in case. Guess what he told me? You don't have a leg to stand on." My dad's face turned crimson. He reached across the table, shoving the papers back at me. "How dare you go behind our backs like this? My laugh came out sharper than I intended. Behind your backs? Are you hearing yourself? You've been plotting to steal my home, and you're mad that I protected myself? My mom's voice cracked, part anger, part desperation. Claire, if you do this, you'll tear the family apart. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. No, you did that the moment you decided one child deserved everything and the other deserved nothing. I'm just refusing to play along anymore. For the first time, Michael looked small, his bravado slipping. His girlfriend, Kayla, shifted uncomfortably, glancing between us like she'd wandered into the wrong movie. So what now? Michael muttered. You just keep the house and kick me out? I stared at him, feeling the weight of every sleepless night, every moment of being dismissed, every sacrifice they had never once acknowledged. Yes, I said simply. That's exactly what happens now. The room erupted. My mom screamed, my dad cursed, Michael slammed his fists on the table. But through it all, I sat still, calm, like the eye of the storm. Because for the first time in my life, I had power, and I wasn't going to give it back. When the shouting finally died down, I gathered my folder, stood up, and walked to the door. You can keep calling me selfish, I said over my shoulder. You can keep pretending I'm the problem, but deep down, you know the truth. You built a golden child out of sand, and now the tides come in. Don't blame me for the collapse. I closed the door behind me, their voices muffled into a distant roar. Driving back to my house that night, the streets empty, the dashboard lights glowing, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. But I also knew this wasn't the end. Families like mine don't back down quietly. They would be back, claws out, desperate to reclaim what they thought belonged to them. What they didn't realize was that I wasn't the same Claire anymore. I was ready, and I had one more card they didn't know about, one final safeguard that would make sure they could never touch me again. The morning after that stormy family meeting, I woke up to sunlight cutting across my bedroom floor, my house silent for the first time in weeks. No blaring music, no dirty dishes, no strangers camped on my couch. Just peace. I made coffee and sat on the porch swing, the one I had hung myself, listening to the creak of the chains and the hum of birds in the trees. For the first time in years, I felt the air in my lungs belonged to me. Of course, peace never lasts long when it comes to my family. Within hours, my phone buzzed with messages, voicemails from my mom, long and tearful, telling me I was destroying the family, that Michael's future was in ruins because of my stubbornness. Texts from my dad, short and sharp, warning me I'd regret turning my back on them. Even Michael chimed in, sending me a photo of himself standing outside my house with the caption, "You can't keep me out forever." That's when I played my final card. I called the lawyer I had quietly hired weeks before, the same one who had helped me lock down the trust. Together, we filed a formal notice of trespass against Michael and put legal protections in place. I even installed cameras around the property. My parents thought intimidation would wear me down, but all it did was make me more prepared. The next time Michael tried to barge in, waving his arms and calling me heartless, the police escorted him off my lawn. The look on his face, shock, disbelief, humiliation, was almost satisfying enough to erase years of resentment. Almost. But I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it for survival. Over the weeks that followed, the calls slowed, then stopped. Holidays came and went with no invitations, no passive-aggressive guilt trips. My parents and brother closed ranks, choosing silence over reconciliation. It hurt, not gonna lie. Sitting alone on Christmas Eve, staring at the string of lights I had hung by myself, I felt the sting of what I had lost. But I also felt the strength of what I had gained. Freedom, boundaries, the right to finally live on my own terms. I poured that energy into my house. I repainted the walls, fixed the leaky faucet, planted new flowers in the backyard. Every brushstroke, every repair was like reclaiming a piece of myself. Neighbors started stopping by, offering compliments, sharing coffee. For the first time, I felt like I was part of a community, not just a shadow in my parents' world. Months later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from my aunt, the one relative who had stayed quiet through all the drama. Inside was a handwritten note. "Claire, I'm proud of you. You did what none of us ever dared. You stood up to them. Never doubt your worth." I cried reading it, not because it erased the pain, but because it reminded me I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I was simply someone who finally said enough. And here's the thing, you probably wonder if I miss them. The truth is complicated. Part of me longs for a family who chose love over favoritism, who saw me as more than a safety net. But another part of me knows I made the only choice I could. You can't keep setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. At some point, you have to step out of the flames and breathe. So I chose to breathe. My parents forced me to the edge, tried to strip me of the one thing I built with my own 2 hands. But what they didn't know, what they could never understand, is that the moment I refused them, I didn't just save my house. I saved myself, and maybe that's the real inheritance. Not the deed, not the trust, but the lesson that family isn't defined by blood or obligation. It's defined by respect. You ever been in a situation like that? Where the people who were supposed to protect you ended up being the ones you had to protect yourself from? Would you have signed the papers just to keep the peace? Or would you have stood your ground like I did? Because trust me, choosing yourself isn't easy, but it's the only way you'll ever truly be free.